Hey everybody, Marcos Villegas here, being joined with Michael Buffer as we're in Las Vegas. Ward versus Kovalev 2 happening this weekend on HBO pay-per-view. Fight that we're going to see number 1, number 2 rematch. And Michael, this is really a pleasure for me to speak to you. So thank you for joining us. And before we get into the fight, I've always just personally want to know, when did you know, like, growing up, that your voice was something different, that there was something there? Like, when did you first realize it?
I never realized it. Actually, the only thing I ever did with my voice was play around with a tape recorder just for laughs and fun and do imitations and just kid stuff. This happened, I was in my late 30s when I started doing this. So it just one of those things I stumbled into because I was a fight fan and I lived in Philadelphia. I was close to Atlantic City. In the late 70s, early 80s, they had fights 2-3 times a week, to bring in that New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia fan base to make them gamble, take their money. And so, I used to go to the fights, and it just happened. It took off.
Speaking of your career and just how you've been a mainstay in boxing, really, when you reflect back at all these times, I know there's many, many events that stick out for you, but if you could encapsulate maybe the top 2 that really still etch in your mind to this day.
2 that really stand out. One is, it wasn't a great fight, but it ended up with a great moment. And of course, it was on HBO when George Foreman became heavyweight champion, knocking out Michael Moore in round 10, I think it was. And I think it might have been right here at the Mandalay Bay. He had lost every round, every minute of every round going into that. And finally, he just had something going, and he set Moore up with a 1-2 and a 1-2, and when I say 1-2 the second time, it was like 1-2, and just knocked him out with one punch, and combination. But that last right hand, right between the gloves. Usually when that happens, the crowd roars like they explode, because he was losing and he was big and he's 44 years old, and it was like they were almost on the verge of leaving, as though it was a 9-0 game in the 9th inning type of thing. So the fans just went, and there was that split-second pause before they erupted. It was just so dramatic and so exciting. That always stands out in my mind. It was such a great moment for George. And then another great event was HBO pay-per-view, the Fan Man fight, Holyfield Bowe 2, right here in Vegas at Caesar's Palace. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
When that happened, what were you thinking? Like, when you saw him coming through, like, what was going on through your mind?
Well, this was the early days of people thinking about terrorism, and so, there was that thought. But as soon as it happened, and I kind of got a grasp of what it was and everything, I got on the PA and just continuously urged people to stay calm. The fight will resume. It was a cold night out. I went to both corners. I said, get blankets and put them on the fighters, because they could, fighters, I mean, they could just get, they're all sweaty and everything, and it was like 45 degrees out. And I just tried to keep the crowd calm by continuously talking, and, we're under control, and nobody's injured, blah, 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 except for Fan Man, who appeared to be knocked out, and they took him out on a stretcher. And of course, Riddick Bowe's guys were like hitting him with, in those days, cell phones were like walkie-talkies, and they were like trying to smack the guy because he almost landed on Bowe's wife. And luckily, nobody got hurt except for that one guy.
I read something where, for a time, they felt that it was purposely done to, like, kind of distract the fight. I don't know whichever side said it, but I remember there's like a crazy theory out there about that. But
crazy theories about everything.
Yeah, I know, right? We live in a crazy time too. Speaking of the rematch, Michael, you got a guy in Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev, very highly skilled technicians. One guy comes forward, the other guy is known to be smooth. When you see these guys fight, who do they remind you of from the fights prior that you've covered and watched?
I don't know. There are so many fights where you have slugger versus boxer. Just going into this fight, I anticipate a better fight than the first one. The first one was good, with an edge towards just saying, it was decent, not as exciting as we thought it would be. I think this one will pay dividends in excitement, because I really feel as though, all fighters want to go for a knockout. Whether it's Paulie Malignaggi, who's not a knockout fighter, or Willie Pep in the old days, they always want a knockout. But I think Andre Ward, who's not a power puncher, really wants to knock this guy out. And you know Kovalev doesn't want it to go to the scorecards again. I mean, that's just without a doubt. I think Kovalev has trained that when it comes to the last 6 rounds, he's going to fight with anger, and he's going to fight with focused anger. In other words, he really is not going to just try to, think he's ahead and stay in there and try to match him. I think he's going to try to overwhelm him with power. And I think Andre Ward wants to prove to himself and to a lot of fans that he is a guy that worthy of being pound for pound the best fighter in the world, which a knockout would, demonstrate. So I just see a really good fight. I think it'll be a slugfest, just a gut feeling.
Mm-hmm. Usually right with your gut feelings?
Hardly ever.
No, don't say that, Michael. Hey, Mike, Andre, last gold medalist that we've had in the United States. Right. You being a part of the sport for so long.
The last guy that won.
The last guy to bring a gold medal. You being a part of the sport, why do you think that is? Why do you think we haven't gotten as many gold medalists as we used to back in the 80s?
There's a lot of different reasons. People say that there's more access now for the inner city sports, for soccer and football, baseball, where you didn't really have that through the 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. So athletes, from urban areas, and that's where, a lot of our fighters come from. They don't come from Harvard and Yale and that sort of thing. So you're seeing avenues for athletes to go to different sports, and then they're not getting into those boxing programs that are usually available with the gyms and the boys clubs and things that you used to see. That might be the reason. People have said that, so it could be it.
Do you feel fighters back then were a lot better than the fighters now, or do you feel that it's just a different era and the athletes overall are better? Because I know that's a big theme amongst sports people, and they always compare past athletes to current athletes, and they always draw a lot of comparisons between the two.
I think when you're comparing boxers today to boxers in the past, you have to realize that a welterweight today is really a middleweight, with this thing where they weigh in the day before. When Sugar Ray Robinson weighed in the morning of the fight, he was a middleweight, and 2 weeks later he was still a middleweight, and he walked around at 160 pounds. Today, a middleweight walks around at 175, 180, and then Canelo, for example, when he would fight at 154 and 155, he would fight at like 170 pounds. He put on that much weight. He would because he had a full 30 hours to rehydrate, and so if you're going to compare different fighters today from the past, if you're going to say this guy would beat Marvin Hagler, well, yeah, but I would take a welterweight and compare him to a welterweight today and compare him to Marvin Hagler, because that would be the same weight division. It just happens to be the way it is. I'm not a big fan of weighing in the day before the fight.
Day before?
No, I don't think we're getting the best quality out of the fighter, because they rehydrate. Muscle tissue takes 48 hours to fully rehydrate properly, so they're not even doing what they should for their bodies. But we'll leave that up to the experts.
I'm used to the weigh-ins. So I wrestled, so the day of the meet, I'm used to doing that. But even that in itself was tough.
Especially like at high school and college level. I don't know how you guys did that. I mean, wow,
they were very bad weight cuts.
If you have somebody on your team and you're both equal, and the coach says, okay, well, let's let Bob take this fight. You drop 6 pounds and fight. And that's what you would do, right?
A true story. I cut 25 pounds in the course of a month and a half to go to 150 to 125 to be able to make 125. So yeah, they're very, very tough cuts to make.
Your mother let you do that?
She hated it. I turned into a vegetarian for about 3 months to be able to do that, and my mom would always stick food in front of me.
I had a nephew that wrestled in high school, and he was very good, and his coach would always have him losing weight because he knew he was good, and he wanted to put him in against the better guy at this weight and that weight, and he used to drive my niece crazy.